Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a comedy, horror, mystery film called Happy Death Day to you. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. One morning, Ryan Fan wakes up in his car after a loud truck passes by. On his way to his dorm, Ryan comes across an old lady walking her dog. He even tries to pet it, but the furious dog barks at him. Terrified, Ryan avoids it and proceeds walking. Then suddenly, a homeless man appears from the bush, making him shocked once more. In a corridor near his room, a guy is playing a trombone, making the guy next door shout at him as he is loud. Ryan passes by and finally reaches his room, where he finds his roommate, Carter Davis, making out with Gelbman, forcing him to leave. Ryan then visits the university's quantum mechanics lab to meet up with his friends, Samar and Dre. At the lab, Samar and Dre inform him that their machine yielded a high energy yesterday, September 18th. Delighted to see the progress on their thesis, Ryan celebrates, but Samar reminds him that it could also be a bad thing, as they have no idea what the reactor emitted. As they discuss, Dean Branson arrives and suspends their research due to lack of results and the damages it causes in the university. The dean informs him that they will hold their project in a while. Troubled, Ryan lies on the couch and grabs his phone, but he is surprised to see a snapshot of himself sitting on the couch. He receives more photos, as if someone's stalking him. Ryan examines the photographs and tracks down the camera's angle until it leads him into another lab. As he searches the room, he is surprised to see Samar, who is also surprised by Ryan's screams. When Samar picks up the churro he saves for Ryan, he perceives a man wearing a smiling baby mask behind Ryan and stabs him on his stomach. Then suddenly, Ryan regains consciousness inside his car and immediately realizes that something is off, as he feels deja vu. As he walks, Ryan encounters the old lady with a dog who barks at him again. Confused, Ryan throws a stone into a bush, and the homeless man appears and yells at him. He continues walking into his room and witnesses everything is happening again, including the trombone guy. When Ryan walks into his room, he tells Tree and Carter about what he's experiencing, to which Tree believes he is now trapped in his death time loop and recounts the time when she's the one experiencing that. She tells him that it seems the loop is passed into him and that he has to relive the day repeatedly until they figure out who his killer is. Tree then grabs a baseball bat and asks Ryan to bring her where he saw his killer. They follow in his footsteps back to the lab, but no one is there when they look in the same spot he died. Then suddenly, Babyface appears behind Ryan, to which he strikes it with a mop, revealing Samar behind it. Samar complains about what Ryan did to him and tells him that he just wanted to scare him with the mask he saw in the hallway. Tree asks if Samar is the killer, to which Ryan responds that he was with him when he died. Dean Bronson appears again, summoning Ryan to end his science project. When Ryan shows Tree and Carter the reactor, she understands that Ryan is the one who accidentally created the time loop that keeps her reliving Monday the 18th. At the cafeteria, Tree tells Ryan that he has to stop the time loop, or else he has to relive this day over and over again. Tree then freaks out when she sees Danielle, her sorority sister, who approaches her and asks why she didn't attend the meeting. Tree then makes an excuse, to which Danielle insults everyone at the table and leaves. Carter then shares his plan to keep Ryan safe by putting Ryan in a crowded area. At the gymnasium, the trio tries to keep Ryan safe at a basketball game, but the game ends soon, unexpectedly, forcing them to leave. While the students are heading out, Ryan notices Babyface staring at him and runs in panic the opposite way, with Babyface close behind. Babyface grabs Ryan and Tree hits him with a bat and knocks him out. When they remove his disguise, they are astounded to discover that the killer is none other than Ryan himself. A little while later, Ryan's doppelganger is unconsciously tied up. When he wakes up, the replica informs them that he was trying to stop the loop. However, he landed into a parallel universe. He's here to assassinate Ryan from this timeline to prevent him from causing a worse catastrophic accident with the reactor. Confused, Ryan goes to ignite the reactor in an attempt to fix the timelines. However, Ryan's doppelganger convinces Tree and Carter to stop Ryan. But Ryan is unstoppable. When he manages to free himself, the second Ryan goes to destroy the reactor. But it's too late, as it causes a massive explosion that throws everyone back. The power then goes off. Suddenly, Tree wakes up in Carter's room. He tells her the same things he told her every time she woke up on her birthday. She hears her birthday ringtone and confirms she has awoken on Monday the 18th all over again. Enraged, she screams for Ryan and demands to bring him back. However, Ryan doesn't even know her yet. Tree freaks out and calms herself by shouting her frustrations into the pillow. Tree walks out of the room and summons Ryan into his lab to figure out what's going on. Later on, Tree walks on the way to her dorm. Carter and Ryan follow her, watching her scream at everyone as if she's gone mad. Tree walks to her room to look for Lori. She requests the poison cupcake that she believes Lori was preparing, but she informs Tree that there is no cupcake, implying that Lori does not intend to murder Tree. She then greets her with a happy birthday before leaving for work. Tree then realizes that it's a bit different, but she doesn't know exactly what's wrong. While in the dining hall, Tree explains to them what happened to her before waking up in their room. Ryan hypothesizes that Tree is repeating the same day in a parallel reality. Then suddenly, Danielle walks in, making Tree freak out once again. As she tells an excuse for not attending their meeting, Danielle approaches Carter and kisses him. Tree notices with dread that Carter is dating Danielle in this timeline, who evidently is not rotten like the Danielle she knows. She even sits with them, talking about their charity. Uneasy, Tree leaves the campus to eat lunch with David, her father, to celebrate her birthday. However, she whispers to Ryan to meet with her at his lab by 3 p.m. During their lunch, David greets her. When the waiter asks if they would order now, her dad refuses as they're still waiting for another one. There, Tree perceives Julie, her mother, from a distance. Tree is astounded as she witnesses another significant difference, which is Julie is still living in this reality. For the first time in years, she goes to embrace Julie, and they spend their time celebrating both Tree's and Julie's birthdays. That afternoon, Tree meddles into Ryan's lab and prevents him from closing the loop, as she now wants to stay in that timeline. When Carter pursues her to ask why he stopped Ryan, Tree confronts him for not telling her about his relationship with Danielle. He informs her that he thought that she already knew that since they're housemates, to which Tree walks out. That night, Tree searches through her phone and discovers years of memories with her mother that she was unaware of. Suddenly, Tree sees a news broadcast about John Toms, who tries to kill her in her timeline, being transported to the hospital. At the hospital, Tree grabs an axe and rushes over to him. As Tree enters Tomb's room, she's apprehended by a cop and forced to drop her axe as he cuffs her. As the cop escorts her out, Babyface stabs the police to death. Tree runs away from Babyface, believing it's Lori. Then suddenly, Lori appears in the elevator behind her and takes Tree to safety. Lori leads her across a construction zone, but Babyface spots them and stabs Lori in the chest, killing her. He then chases Tree up the stairs but trips off, making Tree run into the roof. Terrified, Tree proceeds to run into the rooftop. However, she falls into the building as she runs, looking at her back. On the same day, Tree awakens and discovers that she is still in the parallel dimension. She returns to the lab with Ryan to explain everything to him, as well as to Samar and Dre once more, so that they can close both time loops. However, Ryan tells her that it would be a trial and error process, since they have to remove variables in order to get the right algorithm that would close the loop. Samar also demonstrates to her that they can't keep track of their progress, since their knowledge about it gets reset every time. Carter then realizes that Tree could be a living memory for them, and the rest of them suggest that she would kill herself rather than being chased by Babyface. Later that day, Tree starts to memorize the failed algorithms so they can extract them out next time. Aside from memorizing heavily mathematical equations, she has to bear with the pain that she feels every time Carter and Danielle are together. Then, at the end of the day, she must think of ways to kill herself. For the following death days, Tree goes through a suicide montage, including electrocuting herself in the bathtub, swallowing drain cleaner, leaning into a wood chipper, jumping to her death, and even skydiving in her underwear with no parachute, purposely landing in front of Carter and Danielle. However, when she wakes up again, the added trauma of her constant death takes its toll on her, and she collapses in Carter's arm before he takes her to the hospital. At the hospital, Dr. Gregory, who is having an affair with Lori, checks on Tree. When she realizes that Lori is about to die, she tells Gregory to go get Lori away. Gregory denies knowing Lori at first, but when Tree tells him to ask his wife instead, Gregory runs into her. She also rushes out and knocks the cop unconscious to steal his gun. However, Tree finds Lori dead on the floor. Suddenly, Babyface appears behind her, but she shoots him twice before he flees. She removes his mask and sees Tomb, to which she asks who freed him. But the real Babyface comes and tries to take the rifle from Tree's grip. She notices an oxygen tank nearby and shoots it, killing both of them. On another death day, Tree awakens with full determination to close the loop as soon as possible, as she's getting weaker every time. Tree immediately heads into the lab and shows everything they've gathered into them. Ryan immediately proceeds into the computer, and finally, they find the correct algorithm, making everyone celebrate. The time comes, and Ryan reminds her that she cannot go back to her dimension once the loop is closed. Tree looks at Carter and makes her final decision to stay in their dimension instead. When they're about to close the reactor, it doesn't work since the driver is invaded by a virus, so they have to wait 6 to 7 hours before they can try again. Frustrated, Tree walks out and Carter follows her. Worried, Carter confronts her about her decision, knowing that someone will die, and he thinks she's selfish. Tree snaps as she tells him that he has no idea what she has to deal with every day, and she informs him that they are together in the other timeline, which makes it even harder for her to choose between him and her mother. Carter tells Tree that she's living someone else's life and that she should not remain stuck in the past. However, Tree leaves and goes to lunch with her parents again. Julie craves cinnamon that she and Tree shared last year on their birthday, but she doesn't remember that and soon recognizes what Carter meant. The family pauses for a rest at a motel. Inside, Tree receives a text from Ryan stating that the reactor is ready. While David is away, Tree asks Julie what she would do if she had never met David. Julie expresses her inability to fathom living without him and tells Tree that she would choose to be with David because he brings Tree to her life. Then, Tree sees on TV that Toombs has escaped and killed Lori, the cop, and Carter, who rushed to stop the killer. Suddenly, Tree realizes that she must prevent them from closing the loop, or Carter and Lori would die. She grabs the car keys and hurries out, attempting but failing to reach Ryan as he and the others prepare the reactor. Tree then speeds towards an electricity facility, causing a wide blackout. Again, Tree is resurrected and returns to tell Ryan the algorithm, but this time she chooses to go back to her old timeline. As Ryan gets the reactor ready, Tree heads into her dorm to change clothes. She comes across Lori and expresses her happiness to see her. When Gregory comes to pick up Lori, Tree informs her that he's not worth it and sympathizes with what Lori feels and hugs her before leaving. She then goes to Danielle's room to apologize for being mistaken about her, only to discover a guy emerges from the bathroom with nothing but a towel on, and Tree realizes that Danielle sucks in both realities. Later on, Tree goes to their birthday lunch, where she asks David to let her have a moment with Julie. Tree then grabs Julie's hand and expresses how much she loves her and how much she admires her as a mother. After a touching message, Tree embraces her mother. As Tree makes her birthday wishes, Tree stares at her mom and blows the candles with her. Finally, Tree shares her gratitude towards Carter, Ryan, Dre, and Samar before returning to her timeline. Suddenly, Bronson and 2 security guards arrive unexpectedly to grab the reactor. Tree recruits Danielle to pretend as a blind French student to distract Bronson and take his keys, and enter the office where the reactor is before returning it to the lab. That night, Tree goes to the hospital to save Lori. While the team sets up the reactor, she enters the room, armed with the cop's gun, and kills Toombs before he can attack. Lori and Tree flee, but are pursued by Babyface. Tree correctly deduces that the assassin is Gregory, who wishes to silence Lori for the affair. However, Stephanie, Gregory's wife, arrives to shoot Lori before they can go. She gives Gregory the gun to kill Tree, but he shoots Stephanie first, thinking that he wants a divorce. Gregory then chases Tree until they end up in MRI room. As he draws his gun on her, Tree activates the magnet, and Gregory becomes entangled in it by a metal wheelchair. Tree pulls out the screwdriver, which pierces Gregory's chest and kills him. Carter arrives, and he and Tree assist Lori in getting onto a stretcher. Tree expresses her regret on how things turned out, and expresses her desire for things to be different, even though Lori is unsure what she means. Meanwhile, Ryan, Samar, and Dre have restarted the reactor, but Bronson and the guards are attempting to stop them once more. Samar and Dre keep them at bay for as long as they can until the reactor is turned on. Tree informs Carter that they are together in the alternate timeline, and they share a kiss just before the reactor returns Tree, a fraction of a second before Bronson can pull the plug. Suddenly, everyone in the room awakens just after the blast. Tree turns to Carter and inquires about Danielle, to which he asks, "Who?" And she excitedly jumps on him as she realizes she has returned home. A few credits later, Tree, Carter, Ryan, Samar, and Dre are required to do community service for using the reactor. Suddenly, a couple of vans arrive, and a DARPA agent invites them to their headquarters. There, the agent shows the reactor and congratulates Ryan on his scientific achievement. DARPA wants to use it in an experiment, which means they'll need a human subject to trap in a time loop. Tree claims to have found the perfect recruit for it. Suddenly, Danielle wakes up and screams, caught in her own time loop. As Tree gradually realizes that she doesn't belong in the parallel universe and she's living someone else's life, Tree uses the remaining time to correct the situation as much as she can. In the end, she manages to save Lori's life, who tries to kill her in her own dimension. She also successfully returns to her timeline, accepting that she can't live her past anymore and that she must deal with her own life to avoid waking up on the same day all over again.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.